Alright, hello everyone. In today's video, I wanted to show you guys the books that I read in 2022, just kidding. I'm gonna be honest, there are not a ton because 2022 I kind of got back into reading, so I just kind of eased my way in, read some books I thought I might enjoy. There are two that I'm going to start with. I'm going to start with those because I don't have the physical copies and I'd love to be able to hold it up and show you what it is. So the first book I read, and this was honestly one of my favorite books. It was such an easy read. I loved it. It was super lighthearted. That's Unhoneymooners by Christina Lauren. Christina Lauren, I believe, is actually two different authors that write together. So she is for sure an author that I will be checking out more. Unhoneymooners is about two people getting married, and the brother's brother is in his wedding and the sister's sister is in her wedding, and those siblings of the bride and groom absolutely hate each other, despise each other, don't like each other at all. But what ends up happening is everyone at the wedding is served a buffet style of food, and those two characters, the brother and sister of the bride and groom, do not like buffet food, don't eat it. One is actually allergic, I think, and they end up being the only ones to not get severe food poisoning. So what happens is they end up going on the honeymoon for the bride and groom because they had some type of special, so someone had to use it up. Olive and Ethan are the brother and sister of the bride and groom, and they go on this honeymoon. They hate each other, and this is the regular enemies to lovers kind of trope. Slowly they start falling for each other. You kind of go through the characters. There's a little bit of a side story to it. You go through the characters trying all of these things that were meant for the couple on the honeymoon, and I don't know, it was just a really sweet, really light read. I cleared through it so quickly. I think I read it in about 2 days, and yeah, that one is like a 4.5 out of 5 stars for me. I absolutely love that book. The next book is called Woman in Cabin 10 by Ruth Ware, and this book is about Lo Blacklock. She is a journalist. She is asked to go on a cruise ship that has newly been created, called the Aurora, and they just want her to write about it because she is a travel journalist. So she ends up doing that, and then the first night, she wakes up to screaming and finds blood, and it is coming from the room that is next to her, which is cabin 10. That's where that ties in. And what ends up happening is when she goes to tell somebody, there is absolutely no recollection of a person in cabin 10. That cabin is supposed to be empty, so she is not believed, and throughout the story she's kind of trying to figure out who the woman in cabin 10 was, because she was convinced that she heard a scream and saw a woman being thrown overboard. It's definitely a creepy book. There were definitely twists that I was not expecting. There are some situations she gets herself in where you want to find out what's going on, but you almost don't want to keep reading because it's just a little bit sketchy, I would say. You just kind of don't know what's going to happen, and I feel like when you're reading scary books or thriller books, your mind does so much more than watching it on a screen, because your mind can make up the worst possible case scenario, make it as scary as it can in your head with like no control. So I definitely was freaking myself out more than I probably needed to, but it was definitely an interesting book. I would say that it was kind of a slow start, and then yeah, towards the end it picked up, so that was kind of something that I didn't love. It was kind of hard to keep going through the first 100 or so pages. With that being said, I think I would probably rate this more of like a 3.5 stars or a 4 out of 5 stars. The next one is The Guest List, and this one is honestly probably my biggest disappointment of, oh, it's by Lucy Foley, by the way. It's a Reese's Book Club book, and this might have honestly been my biggest disappointment of 2022 book-wise, which I was really sad about because I had heard so many good things about it, and it might be one that I need to go back and read again. But this one, if we are going to talk about slow books, this was extremely slow for me. I almost did not finish it, but I could not do that to myself. I bought the book and I wanted to be able to get through it. This is about a wedding that ends up being on an island, and something terrible happens during the wedding. The lights go out, and that's kind of where the opening of the book leaves you, is the lights going out and hearing screams, and then all of a sudden that's the end of the opening chapter, and the next chapter goes into one of the characters of the book. Like I said, it alternates characters. So it goes between the groom, the bride's sister, some of the groomsmen. So basically throughout the book, you're trying to figure out who was screaming, who might have been the person that had caused that scream to happen, but you don't really understand why either, and that's why I didn't love the book. I just didn't feel like it was slow. I didn't feel like there was enough detail for it to make sense. I felt kind of confused by what was going on. I will say though, I'm 90% sure that when I read this, I think this was my first read of the year, and I'm 90% sure I had COVID, so I could have just been in a daze. It could have been brain fog. But yeah, you're just trying to figure out who's screaming. So terrible explanation, but this was not my favorite book. I'd say probably like 3 stars out of 5. Next one is A Girl's Guide to Murder. So this one is a cute because it's YA kind of mystery. There's definitely some heavy stuff in it, but it was interesting. And it is about Pip, who is doing her senior capstone project and wants to cover a mystery that is not unsolved, but she feels is wrong in her community. And what happened is, years prior, a senior had died at her high school. She was murdered, and someone was framed for it, another student, her boyfriend. That person that got killed, her boyfriend, he was framed for the murder, supposedly. That's what Pip thinks. So basically it's just taking you along, and she's trying to solve the mystery as well as finish her senior capstone project, and she ends up connecting with Sal, or person who killed the high school senior, ends up connecting with his little brother, who I believe is in Pip's grade. So yeah, there's a little bit of romance, a little bit of mystery. There's definitely some sticky situations she gets herself into. I will say, because it's YA, I didn't feel like it was super heavy or super scary. I also will say that some of the spots were kind of cheesy a little bit, because it is a romance, but it's supposed to be a high school romance, and there are just some cringy spots in it. However, that is also because I'm almost 22 and have definitely read heavier romance books than that. I think there might have been a little bit of language, not really anything major, but it was a good read. My sister, actually, she's in 9th grade, and she read the book at the same time as me. She finished it way before me because she just reads so quickly. I think she actually finished the series. So it was good enough for her for a 9th grader, and appropriate enough for her, and me at 21, I was also able to read it at the same time and enjoy it. So I would probably give this about a 4 out of 5 stars. Yeah, and I think you guys should check it out. The next story that I read is The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. Evelyn Hugo was a star in, I want to say the 50s. Yes. Okay, so she was a star in the 50s through the 80s. That was really her whole rise to fame when she was the most famous, and she hires Monique, which is a magazine writer. She asks her to come over and write her autobiography and not publish it until she dies, I believe. So basically this story just takes you along, and it kind of goes back and forth between Evelyn and Monique having conversations, but also takes you back to the time of Evelyn, and just has her as the character as she's talking to the people that she's working with or dating. But either way, it shows the 7 husbands that she had as she was rising to fame, and kind of how she used some of them to climb the ladder, and some of them that she truly loved, and kind of breaks down those relationships and just shows a woman who is killing it in a time where women were not really doing a lot, or weren't allowed to do as much, or were not seen as equal. Like, it's just a very empowering book, and there is more romance to it than just these 7 husbands, which was a really sweet story to follow. But the other thing is, there is a twist at the end. The entire time Monique's trying to figure out why she has been chosen to be the writer for Monique, or for Evelyn, because she didn't know Evelyn. They had no connection. And yeah, there is a huge twist at the end that just made my jaw drop to the floor. So this was a good read. I would definitely recommend it, and I would say that this is probably another 4 out of 5 stars for me. Next one is Verity. So this has been so popular. This is by Colleen Hoover. This is actually the only book I've read by Colleen Hoover. I'm currently working on another one of hers right now, but I loved this book. I did not think that it was as scary as everyone was saying until I finished the book, and then that night, this is awful, this is so stupid, but then that night I actually had a nightmare about the entire book, and I was like, okay, I think this messed with me way more than I thought it did. So Verity was a very popular author and was working on a huge series when I think she ended up getting in, I don't remember what kind of accident it says. I think it was a car accident or something like that. But she ends up getting into a terrible accident, and her husband decides that someone needs to finish her series for her, and they hire Lowen, is her name, Lowen Ashley, who is a very small writer, to come and finish the series. So what happens is Lowen goes and stays at the house where Verity and Jeremy live, and she stays in the office to read the books and read the note that Verity had been writing when she was thinking of ideas for the story, so that she can build on it and make it still seem like it's Verity. So what ends up happening, and this is the crazy part of the book that everyone talks about, is as she is looking through those notes and reading those books and in Verity's office, she ends up stumbling across the manuscript to an autobiography that Verity was planning on publishing. We don't really know. And in it, it indicates some pretty crazy things about bad things that have happened to Jeremy and Verity. And the other thing throughout this story that just made my skin crawl is Verity, or no, who is it? Lowen does not think that Verity is as injured as she says she is. Well, she can't say anything. She's basically in a vegetative state. But she just doesn't think so. She feels like she's looking at her and able to follow her face, and just creepy things like that. Oh, there were so many times where, ugh, it was just creepy. And then at the very end, and this is where everyone always talks about letter versus manuscript, a letter is found by Verity, or not by Verity, by Lowen, and she has to decide what she believes, if she is team manuscript or team letter. What is she gonna go with? So yeah, there's also a little bit of romance to this. Kind of feels forbidden. But yeah, it was definitely a good read. I would give this probably a 4.5 out of 5. And lastly is, I told you there were not that many. Lastly is Book Lovers by Emily Henry. I loved this book, and I will also be checking out more books by her. I would say my top authors this year have been Colleen Hoover, Taylor Jenkins Reid, and then Emily Henry. Nora Stevens is a very cutthroat, I want to say she's a publisher. She's either a publisher or an editor from New York, and she enjoys New York, but her younger sister, who's pregnant, Libby, asks if they can go to Sunshine Falls, North Carolina, which is a place where her book, one of the books that she had worked on, was based out of. Felt like it was a very cheesy book and didn't like it at all, but finally she does agree to take a break from her work or take a break from the city and go to Sunshine Falls. So what ends up happening is she runs into her rival. His name is Charlie, and he is a hotshot book editor as well. And yeah, they just do not get along, but they keep bumping into each other. Little does she know that Sunshine Falls is actually his hometown. So throughout the book, they just butt heads, they clash, and then, I don't know, they kind of find their way together, and then apart, and together, and apart, and you just never know what's going to happen with their relationship. But there are times where you just really fall in love with him, and you really fall in love with her, and you fall in love with the idea of their relationship. And yeah, it's a good read. This is another kind of light one, and it's on the same pages on oh my gosh, Unhoneymooners for me. Like, I just fell in love with their love story. I just thought it was cute. I wanted it for them. I was happy for them. I wanted to see where it would go. And yeah, this is definitely interesting. I'm not going to tell you if they end up together or apart, because like I said, there is a lot of back and forth. But yeah, it's just read it. Yeah, it's cute. The fact that it's based in some kind of like Hallmark movie town just makes it's basically like a Hallmark movie in a book. And that's why I enjoyed it, because it was just grumpy people that kind of mellow out and open up to each other, and yeah, it was just cute. So I would say another probably 4 to 4.5 stars out of 5 for this one as well. Like I said, not that many books this year, but hopefully next year there are more, and I can't wait to share those with you guys when I read them. So yeah, thank you so much for watching this video, especially if you made it to the end. Be sure to give it a thumbs up if you liked it. Comment down below any other videos you'd like to see from me, and subscribe to my channel if you are not. I will see you guys in my next video. So bye!